This business is like the Wild West. Gold, silver, rare coins, lost treasures of history. You never know what's gonna walk through that door.
These are coins from North Korea.
I'll probably double my money. Watch this. I'm Evan Kale, and this is Pawn Man. Guys, we have a great episode of Pawn Man in store today, but before we get into the episode, I sincerely want to thank the episode sponsor, Braden River Antiques in Sarasota, Florida. You guys go visit Braden River Antiques on social media, Instagram. There's a link in the video description below. If you live in Sarasota or you're just passing through, go check out their antique shop. You guys go to antique shops, one of my favorite things to do. There's always something great to find. And if you don't live in Sarasota, go visit them on social media. You can still shop online too. They're at 10,005 Northeast Avenue in Sarasota, Florida, or check them out on social media. Like I said, link in the video description. With that, you guys, let's get into it. All right, let's see, what do we got today? Yeah, it's not a terribly big one. This is probably 0.15, 0.2. You just want me to go item by item? Yeah, that'd be cool. So, yeah, okay, stones are very tiny. I wouldn't really pay much extra. This one here. This one is 305. Okay.
Now, obviously these were from Mexico, and I don't know.
Okay, this, yep, Mexican stamped. 48 grams. Metal value is 32. I'd buy this one at 50. Okay. Stamped. I'd buy this one at 30. Oh, this is just sterling. This piece isn't terribly expensive. 60. This is 20 bucks. Okay.
I don't know about the. So my knowledge is, I tried to use a magnet. I've learned more about the markings and codes.
This is probably gold. It's rubbing right. Yeah. So yeah, that looks just fine. Okay, these ones are 120.
So this is one I'm not 100% on.
Yeah, this is not sterling.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, this looks like a something. This is white gold. 40 bucks. Oh, this is cute. Opal.
And I don't know if Monet means anything, but I know that that's supposed to be a...
Monet means costume. But this is not Monet. This is, I think this is 18 karat. This one's 190.
Okay. Now watches is where...
I'm okay. Let me see what you got.
Well, so now this is an interesting one. This, if you work for a company for a long time, you know?
I've seen that.
Instead of getting like a lot of money.
Is that a Seiko?
I don't know.
No brand. I don't think this is an expensive watch.
Okay. This is like 10 years of, you have to sell like $1 million of shit to get this shitty watch.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it sounds alright. I mean, I'd buy that thing at like 20 bucks.
Now we'll do something with it.
A few moments later.
Nice guy. That was a definition of a Minnesota goodbye. Jesus Christ, he was in here for like 35, 40 minutes. We concluded the deal half an hour ago and he just got da-da-da-da-da. So, paid him $800 for all this stuff. The 18 karat opal pendant, this is probably $350. This is a nice vintage piece. These sterling pieces are stamped. I paid $110 for all of them. I'll probably double my money here. Probably gonna scrap this diamond ring. I don't think there's anything special. The diamond is small and shitty. Same with the cuffling. So I'll make about $200 on that deal. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. YouTube, we're gonna talk about Birdman. My favorite album is 5 Star Stunner, just because 100 million. That's like one of the only rap songs I could rap. Probably the whole thing with a gun to my head. Birdman daddy. Pulling up in that brand new caddy. Got money, living lavish. Got bitches, shipping package. Oh, different Birdman. Different Birdman. No, we're not talking about that Birdman. We're talking about this Birdman. Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Yeah, totally different Birdman. I do love Birdman though, that's no bullshit. I think he's a fabulous rapper. I bet he would absolutely hate my fucking guts if he met me in real life though. We talked a little bit about Operation High Jump recently, and I recently acquired this coin here. This is an extremely rare coin. I'm keeping it for my collection. This might be like a $400 or $500 coin. I honestly should probably send it in to get a score. So Admiral Byrd in charge of Operation High Jump. Where does he come from? How did the US government give him one of the most conspiracy theory ridden missions that the government has ever undertaken? Admiral Byrd was born 1888, and after graduating from the Naval Academy in 1912, he was commissioned as an ensign in the US Navy. He learned to fly at the US Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida, and he served in the Navy with distinction until the end of World War I. He also twice jumped over a ship fully clothed and saved sailors from drowning. Twice. His polar career and obsession with the frozen tundra began in 1924. He had a post in Greenland briefly, and his experiences flying over the ice shelves, he loved it. He thought it was beautiful. He wanted to explore more. He got the idea of going to the North Pole. So on May 9th, 1926, Byrd, acting as a navigator with Floyd Bennett as a pilot, undertook that very mission. They flew to the North Pole. They claim they flew from Kings Bay, Spitsberg, Norway, all the way to the pole and back. For this feat, he was awarded the U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was acclaimed as a national hero. He got mega famous like overnight from this. It wasn't quite Amelia Earhart, but it was that same pool of aviation legend. Now, the question is bullshit. Probably. Most likely. I bet money. Two things. Number one, the public started to kind of not believe it as early as 1928 because it just seemed so ridiculous. He stood by his story, but in 1996, after his death, they found a diary, and the diary basically said there was an oil leak, and they turned away 150 miles shy because he was like, well, fucking, who's out here? They're never gonna know. No one's gonna know. Let's just say we did it. What are they gonna say? I guess that worked. Back in the day, that kind of shit used to work. He claimed that he threw a flag out the window and you can find the flag. And they never found the flag. In any event, his celebrity status, despite some criticism, it was a conspiracy theory. Most people didn't believe it. In 1926, like any good grifter, and I hate to call him a grifter because he actually, we'll get to where it's going. The initial rise to fame was kind of a grift. So in 1926, he declares, we're going on an Antarctic expedition next. And because he's so nationally famous, people are pretty liberal with just funding him and giving him money. Some famous rich people backed him as well, including John D. Rockefeller. And when he left in 1928, it was the most funded expedition to Antarctica in history. The expedition lasted until 1930. He established a base on the Ross Ice Shelf called Little America, and he navigated to the center of the South Pole and back in 19 hours. This one he did not fake, and for this he was promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral. So this was his first expedition, and then he launches a second one from 1933 to 35. This one is designed to map and claim territory around the pole. Now, in the winter of 1934, he spent 5 months alone in a hut, enduring temperatures 50 to 75 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. When they found him, he was almost dead. He was sick. He had carbon monoxide poisoning. He had frostbite. It really is a miracle that he didn't die. But of course, he wants to go back again. But this time he's got FDR's backing. He goes on a third expedition funded by the US government from 1939 to 1941. And this expedition had significant scientific achievements. They mapped a lot of the Antarctic. The research they did, figuring out how to live in the cold and be in the cold, and just all the different mapping that they did, very important to science what he did in this research expedition here. And then finally, the fourth expedition is Operation High Jump. We've already talked about it. I would say that one is the most controversial just because of all the crazy conspiracy theories that surround it. But in conclusion, although he probably, and it's not to say he didn't even take off at all. It's not like he flew the plane out of Norway and just was like, land on this island over here until we froze our asses. No, he actually did something very hard and dangerous. He just didn't go the full Monty like he says he did. Probably. Most likely. I would bet money on it. But although his career began with a lie, he ended up making incredible scientific achievements and breakthroughs and is indeed an American hero. And this coin that I have here with him on it, let's take a quick look at it.
Now, what's a bummer about this coin, I think I paid just $100 for this coin. Low end, if this scores an MS61 or 2, this is a $100 coin. If this scores an MS65, it's a $300 coin. If it's an MS67, it's over $1,000 probably. There's very, very, very few of these out there. I don't know why they didn't give it a score. It's not damaged. It's not clean. There's nothing wrong with it. Just sometimes they just don't score coins when you send them in, or if you don't pay, you just want to get a slab, but you don't want to score. That's a thing you can do. Maybe this person was afraid of what it would score. I have no idea, but it is a great coin. It's really cool and rare. I actually didn't even know this coin existed until it was in front of me. And what's strange is I got this. You guys remember this. I still have this. I probably won't have this for too much longer because I have had no interest. And like I said, the guy wants $5,000. There's definitely wiggle room on the price, but I'm running out of time on this. So I'm probably going to have to send this back soon. I mean, the guy called me the other week. He's like, any action? I was like, my God, you would know if I sold it. I didn't sell it yet. But no, so we see to commemorate the achievement of the Byrd Antarctic Expedition 1928 to 1930. So the first expedition. So that's cool. At least they're not commemorating the lie. All right. So again, though, you guys, this coin, I am not selling it. I mean, if you wanted to offer me a stupid amount of money, I would, but I'm going to probably keep this one. So that's the Birdman we're talking about, not the Stone Cold Gangster, who would for sure fucking kick my ass if I said the wrong thing, or knife me or something. Or I'm just trying to imagine what he'd say to me if I met him. I wouldn't even want to fucking open my mouth because it's just, there's so much awkward white Jew that comes out of here. You want to rap 100 million together? I'm gonna need a cheat sheet just to read along the lyrics. I don't want to make too much of a habit of this, but it just, God, people are so insanely dumb, it just boggles my mind. So, okay, I made a mistake on Whatnot. right? And I keep talking about this. Again, I don't want to keep going about this, but just know that like I will continue to make mistakes because I'm overwhelmed because I do all this shit myself. I'm packaging and shipping upwards of 1,000 orders a month myself, and I'm guessing about 1% of those orders I'm making mistakes on. If I make a mistake, I'll make it right. So this guy paid $60 for an order. I guess there's a very expensive coin in one of, it was an album, and I didn't even know that it had the expensive, oh, here this is. Just looking over, it's like, I'm looking for this. I didn't even know that it had the expensive coin in it, so I guess it was like a $600 coin, so accidentally sent it to the wrong person, right? His book that had this expensive coin that he only paid $50 for, and he had a bunch of other shit too, so he only paid like, he massively underpaid for this thing. Somebody else got it, and whoever else got it never reached out to me, so, oops. So the guy said, oh, well, I got my order, but you're missing this thing, and you don't have it. Okay, well, sorry. So I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? Well, I want the coin. Well, obviously, I made a mistake. It was a rare coin. This book, I don't have it. What can I do to make this right? I want the coin. I understand that. What can I do to make it right? Because I made a mistake, but I don't have the coin. So this guy's getting like more pissed, and it's like, okay, I'm really busy, and I'm willing to, send you, what do you want, 2 ounces of silver? Okay, it's way more than what you paid for. Like, what can I do to correct this? Because I made a mistake, it's done. I don't have time to go back and forth, my guy. And I keep saying to him, we're fucking going back and forth and back and forth. And I keep saying, like, what the fuck do you want? Because I can't, like, I can't get you the coin, and I'm happy to work with you. But me concocting this elaborate way to apologize is like, I don't have time for that. It was a fucking $50 sale. He sends me this thing about how it's a $600 coin, and he basically is insinuating that I need to give him $600. And it's like, in what fucking world do you buy something massively underpriced and you don't get it, and then you get to go and claim the full value of whatever it was when you even paid that much? In this guy's head of heads, he thinks that I'm gonna give him $600 on a $50 sale because I made a mistake and he can get his coin that's worth that much. So I blocked him. Because at that point, it's like, I don't want your business and you're crazy, and like, I have attempted to make this right and correct this, and yes, I made a mistake, but if you're not going to allow me any reasonable solution to correct it, then off you go. So it fucking boggles my mind that in somebody's head, they actually think, oh, well, I didn't get it, so you gotta pay me the full value of what this thing is worth to make it right. Like, what? God, you must be fun to deal with at returns. You guys wanna see the most expensive thing that's behind me? What do you think it is? Here it is from a standing up, looking down view. Something on here that is pretty expensive. And when I put it on here, I had no idea it was gonna be expensive. Well, I probably should have guessed. So I'll let you guys kind of get a scan, and I'll give everybody who's paid to be on this thing their money's worth. Any thoughts? Anything here look expensive? Moving over, right here. This, low end, this is probably about $100, low end, probably more. These have become so collectible. This is the only stamp I have in my collection. As you guys know, I don't like stamps, I don't do stamps. This has become one of the symbols of the war, and the war is just over a year now. Because the war is turning a year old, I wanted to talk quickly about some highlights and just inject some opinions on here. Officially, the Ukraine-Russia war officially started February 24th, 2022. However, the war started actually 9 years earlier with Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. I've been following Russia very closely for years with all of this. I cannot believe how bad they've screwed this thing up. We'll rewind. We talked about 2014. Russia took Crimea. They've had this little proxy war back and forth where there's been trench fighting, and like tens of thousands have died. It has not been very well reported on. But then starting in October of 2021, there was a lot of talk about a Russian invasion of Ukraine. They didn't think it was gonna happen. And then Russia started massing troops. They massed 190,000 troops on the border and in Belarus. Putin made his announcement that they were going to denazify Ukraine by removing its Jewish president. Like immediately following the announcement, they invaded. So in February, the first week of the war, the Russians attacked Kyiv and Kharkiv in attempts to cut off the head of the snake, shall we say, topple the Ukrainian government. No government, people fall afterward. Yeah, that didn't work. Within a few weeks, Russians were on the retreat, and this is where evidence of war crimes started coming out. They got very brutal in their retreat. I saw so many videos on social media when they invaded of Russians laughing, and like there's one guy like on a parachute, he's like parachuting down, he's like filming himself and he's laughing. Just because of how many men they've lost. We'll talk about this toward the end. I wonder if that guy died. Like he probably did. I bet a lot of the videos you saw on social media of the first Russian troops laughing about going in, I bet most of those guys are dead now. So in March, after Russia fails to take the two major cities, they start trying to take the eastern region and the southern region, mainly the Kherson region, in an effort to take the Ukrainian coast and strengthen their naval capabilities in the war. And like I said, in March, a lot of evidence of war crimes started coming out. March remains the deadliest month for civilians in the whole war, and this has been a meat grinder for everyone, but especially innocent people. Into April, the whole world's looking at Putin, and the sanctions on Russia get turned way the fuck up. Like, so many major... I remember seeing videos from social media of, like, what life was like in Russia. It's like, well, we don't have Coke anymore because Coke left, so now we have Coca-Cola. Putin pegged the Russian economy to gold, which I actually think is probably the smartest thing he's ever done in his entire career. He's president the same way Hitler was chancellor. Really quickly, that pegging the ruble to gold, it stopped the bleeding of the Russian economy. It made the Russian ruble actually worth something. Nobody's pegged anything to gold in a long time. The fact that the ruble didn't immediately implode, that this didn't destroy everything, that this actually did save the Russian economy tells me they have a lot of fucking gold. He can go smoke and mirrors all he wants, but it's not all bullshit. They've got a lot to back it up. Anyway, in April, though, Putin starts getting desperate with these sanctions, with the free fall of the Russian economy, with the fact that he thought he was going to take, and myself included, this whole Ukrainian territory. He thought he was going to take it within 3 weeks, and he failed miserably. His army got beaten back and chewed up and spit out. I mean, within the first 2 months, the casualties were nuts. Tens of thousands on the Russian side, mostly dead. So in April, he orders a missile strike on a train station and accidentally kills 50 civilians. And like, that blood is like personally on his hands. I mean, this whole fucking war is, but this really pissed the world off. And it begins to highlight how desperate he is getting and how foolish he looks and how much he realizes what a mistake this is, although he's never admitted it. But also in April, to highlight how desperate Putin was getting and what a fool his army was looking like, the Russian warship Moskva, the flagship of their fleet, was sunk. They kind of viewed it as being unsinkable, and the fucker sunk. War is economy, and this highlighted it. It highlighted how the modern military apparatus of these strong, really expensive crafts like battleships are fucking dumb. But then in May, the Russians kind of pushed back a little bit. They took the coastal town of Mariupol and the steelworks, the Azov steelworks, where there was a group of resistance fighters held up as very Thermopylae-esque. It was a big symbol of Ukrainian resistance and finally fell. So they took that. But then in June, Ukraine pushes back. Snake Island, where we have this original Russia warship, go fuck yourself standoff, this piece of propaganda. Ukraine took down the Russian flag on Snake Island, recaptured it, and raised their flag. Meanwhile, Russia is making very little progress, and this is kind of how it continues throughout the summer, this back and forth trench warfare. You know, I remember seeing a lot of these early videos, or these videos like last summer coming out of the war and thinking like, God, this looks like World War I. It's just trench warfare with better guns. Meanwhile, you also have figures on Russian casualties coming out. Couldn't believe it. I thought it was Western propaganda, because like, how are they losing this many men? I know it's what they do. Look at pretty much all of World War II. It was a whole giant meat grinder, but just an insane amount of men are being killed. Capping off the summer of Russian victories or pushing back, in July, Luhansk falls to the Russians. But this is kind of the last big Russian gain, because in August, the whole war shifts. Ukraine mounts a counteroffensive, and it is so effective. They basically undo all of the Russian gains of the war. All of them. Push Russia almost all the way back out. There's just a few places in the east now that are controlled by Russia. It was a very blitzkrieg rapid offensive. From what I hear, the United States basically came up with the whole battle plan. This has been a proxy war. This has been Russia versus NATO being fought through Ukraine. From what I heard, the United States looked at Ukraine's offensive plan and was like, no, you guys don't know how to do war. Let us do it. We came up, I don't know if this is true, I just heard that we came up with the whole offensive that pushed Russia back so bad. And this offensive, it turned the tides of the war. It made it seem like Russia just is not going to win this thing. In October, this offensive that the Ukrainians carried out, pushing back the Russians, basically got carried out in one final act, very much like the Moskva, or this, because Ukraine's propaganda has been very clever and quick to run with the victories and do stuff with them. Putin's stupid little bridge that he built, his land bridge to Crimea, after illegally annexing it, his bridge got bombed, and then Ukraine like literally made the stamp. And once again, Putin is just looking like such a fool. He didn't think that it was gonna go this long. He's losing bad. And if he loses this war, it is his head. There's no way that he gets out of this thing alive. Like, that's the problem with being a dictator. It's generally a lifetime post one way or another. You don't get to retire from being dictator. Very few people do. And those who do, well, it usually doesn't end well. It doesn't turn into, and then they lived happily ever after it was. And then they were in exile and they were poor. They were hanged by an angry crowd. They were found in a drain pipe and they got a literal pipe shoved up their ass after being beaten to death by a crowd. Gaddafi. But this marks the last really big event to happen in the war. Throughout the winter, October, November, December, there hasn't been a whole lot of fighting. The winter's pretty extreme in this region. You guys might have heard, Russia has been reaching for some pretty extreme tactics to try and just break the backs of the people. What they don't seem to realize, and you don't have to look very hard to find this because it is a proven study, When you bomb the shit out of a people, when you terrorize them, when you do to them what the Nazis did to the Brits in World War II, all you do is make a harder enemy to fight. All you do is strengthen them. You give them more resolve. You give them purpose. That purpose is fuck you. And that's what the Ukrainians have. They have so much purpose and anger, and they're so charged from all this. That's just pissing them off. That's gonna make it so that even if they do take Ukraine, they will never conquer the people.
He's a creepy old man in a windowless van who wants to babysit the con artist can.
All right, let's see what we got here.
See what treasures we have today. Ooh.
Evan, is that old?
Do you know the answer to that?
I don't. Is that old?
I would guess it's from the 1950s.
Oh.
It's not stamped. Okay, so these are stamped. They're cute. Ireland, yeah. Oh, that's a little Irish set. Is it pewter? I think it's pewter.
I think so.
Candlestick. Oh, well, this can. I have a piece right over there. It's exactly like this.
What is this, sir?
I forget what they call it. Yeah, it's like Greek figurines, or it's like Greek mythos, Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a big fancy word right there. Mythology. Let's see, what's this? Oh, cool. Oh, this is cool.
You like that?
Yeah, it's an old lighter. Old Japanese lighter.
Japanese?
I think so. I like this stuff.
I hope so.
And a railroad spike. Right?
Yeah.
Any significance, or it's a railroad spike?
It is, yeah.
All right. There's box one. Like it as I was telling it's always as fragile. You know what's funny is a year ago I would have heard that I would have snapped at you, and now I'm like, well, little lady, 19-piece toy china set, America. Didn't we just buy one of these from you?
That one is
Yeah.
right there.
Now I can have a friend. $40.
Would you do 50?
I'll do 45.
That's fine.
I'll do 45.
That's fine.
Double count, that should be 45.
Oh, interesting.
This, I wasn't bullshitting him. This is good stuff. For once, his bullshit price tag is actually too cheap. I bet this is 60, 70 bucks online, this hideous thing. We'll look up prices in a minute here. We'll go over this. But so, when I was talking to him and he said, what is that? What is that? I got the sense that he was testing me to see if I knew and he knew what it was. Meaning, again, he's way smarter than he lets on. There's something there that doesn't quite add up. And I can't help, because he always says, you're so smart, and he's like trying to do something to manipulate me, and I can't quite figure out what, because he knows the shit doesn't work on me. I don't know, I almost wonder if he's watching, and he knows. I don't think so, but let's go over what we bought.
So, first thing, this is not as expensive as I thought, but I mean, we see right here, this is 12, 13 bucks, this 19-piece toy set, probably from the 70s if I had to guess. This eagle, we're gonna look this up here, let's see what here. Dr. Robert Schuller's Eagles Club with a fucking Bible quote. I can just imagine the intelligent, educated, diverse opinionated person who would purchase something like this. Definitely was not racist. Love the gays. His name's in front of a Bible quote that screams, fan of the queers. His bullshit price tag of 33, actually, was too cheap. We got one at 39, one at 89, one at 87, meaning I could easily put this up for 50, meaning
Whole deal. This is a hideous fucking statue right here.
we got all of our money back in our profit with these two. I gotta look up what these are. They're numbered. I would think this is a $50 set. This, I know by experience, is 30, 40 bucks online all day because I have a few of these. This is some of the shit I bought when I first opened this place up. I do like these though. I forget what these are called, but this like Greek design with this pretty blue pattern. You know, I'll do, these will probably just go and live on this like shelf of things that I'm just accumulating from the con artist. This, I think, could be the winner. This lighter, I gotta look into this. This might be very expensive. These, yeah, I probably get 15 online for the pair of these vintage pewter candlesticks, and I gotta look into what this thing is, but this might be another 20, so.
45 bucks on the railroad spike. I'm gonna sell this on Whatnot tonight. I bet I'll get 20 bucks on this thing too. This was a great deal. I bet I'm gonna get 4 or 5 times my money out, so. Don't we love the con artists? We got some great content. Not as great as it usually is. I was feeling, come on, I'm fucking milking the guy like 2 hands on a cow's udder. I may as well be nice.
Once again, before we get into the episode, I want to thank the sponsor, Braden River Antiques. You guys go visit Braden River Antiques on social media. If you're in the Sarasota area, you can visit their store at 1005 Northeast Avenue, again in Sarasota, Florida. So go check them out. They deal in antiques, exotic items, kind of like the really extreme crazy stuff that I do here, artwork, all kinds of cool stuff. Again, go check them out on social media. With that, you guys, we are talking all about specimen currency and famous examples / just counterfeit currency in general. It's one of my favorite things to talk about here on Pawn Man. I love to read. Once upon a time, when I had a social life and free time, I used to read like a book a week. Just love reading. I still like to, I don't have time for it. My favorite thing to read is true crime. It's my favorite thing to talk about here on Pawn Man because in this industry, I intersect with the realm of true crime quite a lot. And one of my favorite aspects of true crime is counterfeit currency. It fascinates me. So like I said, today we're gonna be talking about some famous examples of fake currency, counterfeit currency, and specimen currency, and how agencies and governments detect counterfeit currency. Now, counterfeiting has been around basically as long as we've had an economy. In fact, counterfeiting is known as the world's second oldest profession, right behind being a prostitute. That is known as the world's oldest profession, and I'm not kidding, you can look it up. So starting with modern counterfeit currency, well, we have the Secret Service here in the United States. We've talked about this before here on Pawn Man, established to catch counterfeiters because it was such a problem after the Civil War that it was estimated upwards of 40%, maybe even higher, of all currency that was circulating in the United States after the war was fake. And the reason for this was we didn't have the Federal Reserve Act. We just had banks that were able to print their own money. There was no regulation. There was no oversight. There was no central authority to rein in all the currency that was fluctuating throughout the country. It was a mess. And again, as we've talked about here on Pawn Man, counterfeit currency can wreak havoc in an economy. When you have a fake note that gets passed through an economy, every time that counterfeit note gets exchanged for a good or service, you have a mini rat fuck in the economy. You have a mini hole that has been punched in the economy because you have cheated that economy out of that good or service for something that is truly worthless. Now, when you compound this enough, people just don't trust an economy. And that's just one aspect of many as to the damage that counterfeit money can do to the economy. That is why it is such a serious crime to counterfeit money. There's this hysterical Family Guy joke where it's an early episode, and it's the end of the episode, and they're all at the table, and they're all crying and confessing terrible things they've done. And it's Lois's turn, and she says, "I've been making counterfeit $5 bills for years." So how do we detect a counterfeit? Well, I mean, there's markers, there's machines. How does the Secret Service detect it? How do banks detect it? One of the things that they do, and every government, or every stable government anyway, that issues currency does this. They have what are known as specimens. A specimen is meant to be distributed to banks and treasuries and law enforcement agencies so that they have a specimen of what the fuck they're supposed to be protecting and enforcing. You know, if you regulate cats and you've never pet a cat and you don't know what a cat looks like, it's gonna be kind of hard to regulate those cats, isn't it? Same thing. Weird example, but the analogy holds. So these specimens here, although they look and feel and basically are real, you will notice that the serial numbers on them, it's usually all zeros. The serial number is usually gonna be bogus, and that's because, you know, the serial number is not real because it's not real money. Sometimes they're stamped specimen, not always. This piece I'm holding here, this is some dictator money from Zaire, from Mobutu, but his specimens are actually very expensive. I think this note was like 150 bucks. Other nomenclature they will use, not just specimen, sometimes it says specimen no value. Sometimes the serial number is all nines. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And many of these specimens have what are known as control numbers, and it's meant to track who received the specimen so that if it falls out of their hands, they know that who's got it, or they at least know that it's missing and it's out there. These specimens vary a lot in rarity. Like I said, they're supposed to be controlled. Sometimes they don't produce very many of them. Sometimes they produce a lot of them. They're not supposed to get out. They're supposed to be kept. The banks that get them, they're supposed to keep them. Obviously, sometimes they do end up in private hands. It is not illegal for me to own this. Some notes are not legal to own. Like, we recently talked about the $100,000 gold back. That is an illegal note. You can't own that. But like this one, I can own. This is fine. It's just, this is very collectible. There's not very many of these out there. And, well, it's worth a lot more than this piece of currency ever would have been worth. Generally, though, because specimens are widely distributed, like a specimen $1 bill meant to go out to all, like, that's going to be worth less than $1. Because A, it's not $1, and B, they make a lot of those. But some of the more scarce stuff, Like I said, it varies quite a bit. So just to summarize, a specimen, they're not legal tender. They cannot be used to make purchases. They're usually produced in a limited, regulated quantity and distributed to banks, central banks, governments, law enforcement agencies, and other entities and institutions for educational purposes only. Specimen notes can accrue a large collector premium on the secondhand market, especially if they are scarce enough. Many countries produce specimens. Some countries produce commemorative specimens. Some countries produce specimens for every piece of currency they produce. Some only do it for the main denominations they produce. Sometimes attributes on a specimen might be slightly different than what you get on the actual money, just to differentiate that it is a specimen. In this case, you have the word specimen written on it. There might be some small things that are different from the actual currency. Specimen notes are also usually printed on a higher quality paper so that they last longer and they create the best possible exhibit of what this piece of currency is supposed to look like for the people that are receiving it for educational purposes. Specimens can be a very important tool for law enforcement. They can be used in courtrooms. They can be used in convictions. They are a fantastic learning tool for everybody interested in currency and people enforcing the laws about currency. So that is what a specimen does, is to catch counterfeit currency. But with that, on the flip side, let's talk about counterfeits and some fake, famous counterfeit currency examples and stories. How do you detect a counterfeit? Crash course, 3 seconds, mainly for older money. Hold it up to the light, look through, look at the quality of the paper, look at the colors. Does it look flat or does it look vivid? If it looks flat, it's probably fake. It's a little harder to do with really old notes, especially the old banknotes that were like printed on toilet paper. But look at the quality of the paper. This right here, this one I'm holding, this is a fake banknote. I've showed this one off. I bought this about a year ago, and I keep this in my showcase. Actually, I've used this to detect other counterfeits. It's been kind of my specimen for a counterfeit. Some other ways that you can tell if it's a counterfeit, I know we've talked about this before, just really quick. Is everything lined up on the bill? It's less the case with these older notes, but like if you see things that aesthetically don't make any sense, that's a good sign that it's a fake. If you're buying old currency, do your research. But the most famous example I can think of, at least for American currency, maybe ever, the famous female riding deer note. Just to recap, 1860, Pennsylvania, shopkeep owner S.C. Upham started making novelty currency because the Civil War was about to break out. He wanted to do a little fuck you to the Confederacy. Turned out he was really good at making notes. Really good. He did not intend them to become such a commercial success or to be so goddamn motherfucking good at counterfeiting that people were going down south and spending his money. This right here, this female riding deer note, I've had this one. I've had a few of these. I bought my first one, I think, a year ago, and we talked about it on the show here. This is a note. I will always have one of these in my store, unless they get too expensive, because this story is so important. It's so interesting. This man is an American hero on total accident. Upwards of 5% of all Confederate money was his. He did that much of a rat fuck to them. He accidentally became a Union hero by doing this. He is single-handedly responsible for fucking up the Confederate economy. It was so bad, they put a bounty on his head, the Confederacy. Obviously, they never killed him. There's a lot of reasons why they lost the war, but this really fucked them up. This is, like I said, one of the most famous, if not the most famous counterfeit note out there, and just a great example of why counterfeit notes can be so destructive. Moving on, some other famous examples, the Al-Qaeda Iraqi dinar. In 2012, currency traders and business owners started rejecting 10,000 Iraqi dinars, saying that a value of 7 billion Iraqi dinars had been printed in Iran and injected into Iraq to fuck them up. The fakes were said to be of extremely high quality and very hard to detect. Now, this hasn't fully been proven. It seemed, from the research I did, it seemed like it is true. It was done by Al-Qaeda. They were just trying to destabilize Iraq. But this is something, I couldn't get a whole lot of information on it. I found a lot out there on it. Another example, the Great Train Robbery of 1963. You guys ever heard of that one? This took place in the UK. A gang of criminals stole 2.6 million pounds of currency from a train. The money included a large amount of uncirculated banknotes and high denominations. The gang attempted to launder these banknotes by altering the serial numbers and injecting them into circulation. That's a terrible plan. Like, just through and through, that was a bad plan. The police caught them by tracing the serial numbers. I didn't see exactly what they were doing to alter the serial numbers. I feel like they were using like whiteout. This is like, you guys never rob a bank for so many reasons. Best reason I could think of, though, minus the fact that you're definitely gonna get caught. Them fucking serial numbers, they're all registered, they're all traced. You spend one of those bills, it is going to come back to you. They will catch you based on that. Fucking steal cryptocurrency, that's a much better idea. Maybe you should say don't steal things, Evan. Nope, I like poisoning the youth. Steal, rob. Next up, speaking of the 1960s, going back just a little bit, the Bay of Pigs fake currency. The CIA made these Cuba 20 peso fake banknotes because with the Bay of Pigs invasion, they thought, well, if these guys got a bunch of gold and like American cash, they're gonna get caught. So let's just give them some fake Cuban currency to spend. But let's give them all brand new currency printed in the year that we're dropping them off on the island. What could be suspicious about that? The CIA gave these fake counterfeit notes to the 1,400 men that they had who were supposed to do the Bay of Pigs invasion. They each got 20 notes. One side of the note is Camelos Cienfuegos, and the other side is soldiers in the jungle. Everything about the Bay of Pigs invasion was a fucking terrible idea. Everything, including these notes. They're collectible today. I actually tried to get my hands on one. I couldn't find any. Moving on, another subject. It's not a specifically famous example, and again, we have talked about it on here before. It just fascinates the fuck out of me. North Korea Super Benjamins. They probably have the best counterfeiting operation in the world. They produce $100 bills that are so flawless. I don't know how many of them are out there. I would bet money that I have at least one sitting in my register right over there. People from our own Treasury Department can't pick them out. They don't officially know, or they don't want to tell the public anyway, because it could create massive Imagine if it turns out 30% of $100 bills are fake. But it's not just the Super Benjamins they're doing. The DPRK is producing counterfeit money for probably every single currency on Earth. I bet they have a counterfeiting operation, because it's, again, go check out my episode about the DPRK. It's one of my favorite episodes we've done here. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. They're a state-sanctioned mafia. They exist through criminal enterprise only. Like, that's how they get like almost all their money, almost all their GDP comes from their criminal enterprises. Counterfeit currency is one of the biggest criminal enterprises on the planet, so of course they're gonna have their dig yay deep in that. Now, estimates I saw, 15 to 25 million a year just in counterfeit money operations. That seems like a drop in the bucket. I don't think that's accurate at all. 15 to 25 million is chump change. This is a country that is doing billions and billions and billions a year in crimes. Now, the US obviously is a lot stronger than North Korea, and its sanctions carry more weight in the global eyes than any kind of threat from North Korea, unless you're Sony. So in 2007, like, a lot of these banks came under fire that were not officially working with North Korea, but some people involved in these enterprises and these counterfeit operations are depositing dirty money that they're getting from North Korea in these banks. Like, the banks are participatory, and the Patriot Act gave this a lot of teeth, to stop and go after and prosecute. But here's my favorite thing about this North Korea Super Benjamin thing. We know very little about it, and North Korea denies it. And although the Secret Service is adamant that these Super Benjamins are out there and they are the best of the best fake $100 bills, I'll just say this. The smartest thing the devil ever did was convincing the world he doesn't exist. So with that, moving on to the last subject here, and I've saved the best for last. We've not talked about this on Podman, and the story is incredible. Of course, we've saved the best for last, being a Nazi story. What do you guys know about Operation Bernhard? It's one of the largest counterfeiting operations, if not the largest of all time. It took place during World War II. This was the Nazi secret plan to destroy the British economy with fake currency. The plan was directed and named after SS Major, or as they call it, Sturmbannführer Bernhard Kruger. He set up a team of 142 counterfeiters, mostly inmates from concentration camps from Sachsenhausen and later Auschwitz. Starting in 1942, they began work making 5, 10, 20, and 50-pound counterfeit banknotes. The work began with complex printing plates, high-quality rag-based paper. They had to learn where all the proper watermarks were. This was enormously complicated. On top of that, they had to be able to break the code to generate valid serial numbers, because you can't just make them up. People will know. By the time Sachsenhausen concentration camp was evacuated in April 1940, I should say liberated, in 1945, they produced 8,965,080 banknotes. The total value of all these banknotes was over 134 million pounds. These notes are considered the best counterfeits ever made. Bernhard and his people did that good of a job counterfeiting. Now, you could argue what they were counterfeiting then was easier to counterfeit than the money it is now, and so therefore the examples would just be better because it was easier. In any event, very impressive that these were able to be made. The Bank of England learned of this plot in 1939 from a spy. In 1943, they got their hands on the first example, and they thought it was the most dangerous thing they'd ever seen. These first counterfeit notes were found in the banks in Tangiers. They were recorded like all notes back then in the bank's ledgers. In fact, you can still see these ledgers today because they keep them on the books. Back in the day, they used to handwrite every single note that would come in. This counterfeiting team was also trying to go after $100 bills. They turned their efforts toward the end of World War II, but at that point, they were not going to win this war. They did not have the means to mass produce and undertake this. The original plan with these notes, if you're asking why they ended up in Tangiers and not in the UK, They were going to just drop them over England, and they figured, well, some people will turn the money in, but most people are going to keep it. They're starving. But they didn't really have the planes. They didn't really have the resources. Goring massively shit the bed with the bombing of Britain and trying to take the UK with a mash of planes. They lost a lot of planes. They took a lot of casualties. The plan got turned over from the Luftwaffe to SS Intelligence. And by late 1943, 1 million of these notes had been printed. But they started trying to forge them and put them into circulation in North Italy, of all places, and that's kind of probably how it made its way down into Africa. In fact, the famous mission in 1943 to rescue Mussolini, undertaken by SS commandos, it's rumored they used this fake money. There's no proof of it, though. So even though they have a great example, a great weapon that they can use, they don't have a means to distribute it in England. They're too slow to the punch. It's too late. By the time this could do any damage, the war is already lost for them. After the war, Major Kruger was detained by the British for 2 years. He was heavily questioned and imprisoned. Then he was turned over to the French for a year. He was asked to make forgeries, forge documents, do something, basically like indict himself, and he just refused to do it. They didn't have any evidence. He was smart enough to not hang himself and do what they were asking him to do. So in 1950, they let him go. And then in front of a denazification court in 1950, all the prisoners whose lives he saved, all the people counterfeiting for him, he saved all their lives. Or, I don't know about all of them, but he took care of these people. He made a difference. And all these people testified for him after the war that he saved them, and that exonerated him. He went on to work for the company that produced the forgeries for Operation Bernhard. He died peacefully in 1989, and then I came back as him, because I definitely came back as I must have been a Nazi in a past life. That's a joke I say all the time, but like I can think of no better karma that my queer Jewish ass used to be a Nazi. As for what happened to these notes, it is believed that most of them ended up at the bottom of Lake Toplitz, where they were recovered by divers in 1959. But examples continued to turn up in the UK decades after the war. It was so bad, the Bank of the UK took all notes higher than 5 pounds out of circulation for years. They didn't reintroduce these denominations until as late as the 1980s. Seriously, the 10 pound came back in the 60s, the 20 came back in the 70s, and the 50 came back in the fucking 80s. Today, these Operation Bernhard notes, I'm going to get one. I neglected to get one for this episode. I will get one. We'll have it in a future video so I can show you guys. I love this story. This is so fascinating to me. These notes are really expensive. They're hundreds of dollars. Like I said, probably the best forged notes ever produced. And that's the magic of specimen currency and counterfeit currency. Take it from me, if you're gonna get fucked in the ass for money, make sure it's real. It's a surefire way to get fucked twice. Alright, you guys, well, just like that, it is the end of the day and the end of the episode. Once again, I want to thank the episode sponsor, Braden River Antiques. Give them a follow. There's a link in the video description below. Check out their store if you're in Sarasota. And if you guys like what I do here, you want to help me out, become a Pawn Man Patreon or sponsor. I could use all the help I could get. This YouTube thing is quite a grind. You guys have no idea. But if you guys like this video, be sure you give it a thumbs up. Hit that notification button so you guys know when new episodes of Pawn Man are coming out. Get my books on Amazon. Follow me on social media at Pawn Man, at Evan Kale. And I'll see you guys back here for another great episode of Pawn Man. Later, guys.